It's been 10 years since we've seen one of the absolute best all-time draft classes be picked in 2015. Today, we're going to do a NHL redraft and take a look at the top 20 selections in this draft, which is a pretty stacked draft. And we'll take a look at, based on all the data we know today, if we were able to redraft it, how would they go in order today? We'll discuss that coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're looking at the 2015 NHL Draft, and we're going to do a redraft here based on all the data that these players have accumulated so far in their young careers. For many players, the top guys have been in the league for 10 years. Other guys may have been, anywhere from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, depending on when they made their NHL debuts. But this draft class was absolutely stacked, and in my opinion, I think it will go down as being one of the deeper drafts and one of the best ones we've seen here kind of in recent memory. This will be known as the Connor McDavid draft. Of course, I know the Oilers and the Sabres were right there in the draft lottery, hoping for that right. I mean, they weren't the only ones. The Sabres actually, I think, had better odds. But, of course, the Edmonton Oilers kind of swoop in here and win the draft lottery for the right to pick first overall. But there was a lot of good players in this first round and in this draft overall. And there's going to be a lot of movement here within my redrafting of these players. Now, I've done this exercise before. The last time I took a look at the 2015 NHL draft, I believe, was 3 years ago. So that's another 3 years of data on top of that. So just to quickly take a look first at how these original selections went. And then, of course, we'll talk about some of the other names that went as later picks too. So the original first round, like I said, was Connor McDavid, first overall to the Edmonton Oilers. Jack Eichel went number 2 to the Buffalo Sabres. Dylan Strome, who was teammates with McDavid in junior, went number 3 to the Arizona Coyotes. Number 4 was Mitch Marner to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Number 5 was Noah Hanifin to the Carolina Hurricanes. Number 6 was Pavel Zacha to the New Jersey Devils. Number 7 was Ivan Provorov to Philadelphia. Number 8 was Zach Werenski to Columbus. Number 9 was Timo Meier to the San Jose Sharks. Number 10 was Mikko Rantanen to the Colorado Avalanche. Number 11 was Lawson Crouse to Florida. Number 12 was Denis Gurianov to Dallas. And then, of course, 13, 14, and 15 was 3 consecutive Boston Bruins picks because of the extra assets that they had acquired here from selling off a few players as the team started to go through a bit of a retool. It was an opportunity for them to really set up the team for the future, and I must say, this was very early in Don Sweeney's tenure as GM of the Bruins, and this was a swing and a big old miss by Boston. They ended up drafting Jacob Zboril at 13, Jake DeBrusk at 14, and Zach Senyshyn at 15, with DeBrusk being the only real successful NHL player of the 3. And then on top of that, really, like you'll see in my new redraft rankings here, that DeBrusk really should have been a little bit lower, and there was definitely some talented players that went after that the Bruins could have easily had. For example, the next 3 picks after those Bruins picks all ended up being really, really good players. We had Matt Barzal to the New York Islanders, Kyle Connor at 17 to the Jets, and Thomas Chabot at 18 to the Ottawa Senators. You imagine if they would have went with those 3 guys, they could have had a number 1 center, a number 1 first line winger, and a top pair defenseman. I think that would have been a way better selection than the 3 players that they ended up taking. Of course, afterwards we had 19 Evgeny Svechnikov to the Red Wings. Joel Eriksson went 20 to the Wild. Colin White, 21 to the Senators. Ilya Samsonov, 22 to the Capitals. 23 was Brock Besser to Vancouver. 24, Travis Konechny to the Flyers. 25, Jack Roslovic to the Winnipeg Jets. 26, Noah Juleson to the Montreal Canadiens. 27, Jacob Larson to the Anaheim Ducks. 28 was Anthony Beauvillier to the New York Islanders. 29, Gabriel Carlson to Columbus. And number 30 was Nick Merkley to Arizona. So obviously a lot of good players, and you can see here from that list, obviously a lot of misses as well, but a lot of darn good players. Now, there was also some good goalies that I'm going to make mention here outside of the ones that you've already heard of here in the first round, like Samsonov. Some of the other goalies who actually have even been more successful went a little bit later in this draft, and we'll mention them. I don't have them in my top 20 picks, so I'll just kind of briefly mention who they were. Samuel Montembeault, who originally went to Florida, now with Montreal. Joey Decord ended up originally with Ottawa, ended up going to Seattle through the expansion draft. Of course, Samsonov, as I mentioned. Karel Vejmelka, so Veggie, of course, was with the Coyotes, now with Utah. And, of course, Aiden Hill, Stanley Cup winning goaltender with multiple teams here, now with the Vegas Golden Knights. But obviously that's 5 goalies that became pretty successful and at least regular NHL playing time throughout this draft too. So lots of talented players, and certainly some late round, steals, you could say, including a few players that even went in the second and third round as well. So let's start the redraft here. Obviously, many of these players in the top 20 were already, in the first round, so it's not going to be a huge change. But this was, I'm not going to lie, this was a really, really tough exercise. And I'd like to know in the comments, please tell me how you would rank these players if you were redrafting them today. And I don't know that there's going to be a lot of wrong answers here, because I think you could organize these in a variety of ways and really make an argument that it's the right way. But we'll see. Number 1, the Edmonton Oilers, I would still have Connor McDavid. There's no doubt he's the number 1 player in this draft. He's the number 1 player in the world. He's the number 1 player in the league. And there's just not a world that exists where he would not be number 1 in really any draft. Looking back in the last 20, 30 years, like Connor McDavid would be first overall, and this draft will be no different. So McDavid stays at number 1. Now, of course, originally Jack Eichel was number 2, but now I'm going with Mikko Rantanen. Rantanen has been right up there for productivity amongst all these players. He has a Stanley Cup to his name, a dominant powerhouse winger. Obviously, this was a tough call. Like, when you have guys like Eichel and Marner and, others, Connor and more here to pick from, this was tough. But I went with Mikko Rantanen, number 2. Like I said, the size, the skill, the scoring ability, the playmaking, just everything that he brought, especially in that long run with the Avalanche, just how important he was. And now he's going to be a huge member of the Dallas Stars moving forward. But I have Rantanen at number 2. Number 3, I have Jack Eichel. Now, Eichel, I almost left him at number 2 because obviously centermen and top defensemen are kind of players that, based on position and positional needs, sometimes outrank a lot of the wingers because they are harder to find players. But I just thought Rantanen is one of those few exceptional players as a winger who can be dominant enough to make that consideration. And Rantanen can and has played a little bit of center as well. But at the time, though, we wouldn't have known. We would have known he was likely to be a winger. But I have Eichel at 3, Stanley Cup champion. Obviously, look at the season he's having here most recently as well. Like, I think Eichel is in a position now going forward. Maybe he hit his absolute prime a little bit later than McDavid, but I think we'll see him be potentially at least a consistent 100-point player here for a while. But Eichel would still do really, really well in this draft here, in my opinion. He's an elite centerman who obviously helped lead his team to a cup. You can't ignore that. At number 4, which same as before, I've got Mitch Marner. Marner is one of the best playmaking wingers who can also play on the PK. Pretty good two-way as well. He's got a unique skill set, and I'm curious and interested to see how he'll partner with Jack Eichel in Vegas this year and how his career trajectory will change after the team change this offseason, after departing the Toronto Maple Leafs. But Marner, like I said, it's a little bit of I wouldn't call him a unicorn, but he's a unique player. And I honestly think that he deserves to stay at number 4. But at number 5, which was a massive jump because he was a way later pick, Minnesota Wild forward Kirill Kaprizov. So if he had gone 5, he would have went to the Hurricanes, who originally took Noah Hannafin. But Kaprizov was a major jump up here will be one of the game's most electrifying players. I just thought Marner has done a little bit more than Kaprizov has. He's played a little bit longer. We have a little bit bigger sample size. I like Marner's two-way game and penalty killing a little bit more than a lot of the other forwards in this group as well, which is why he went there. But Kaprizov at 5, to me, a very just explosive, dynamite player who is going to still continue to get better, in my opinion. At number 6, I went with Kyle Connor of the Winnipeg Jets. Connor has been a model of consistency, 30 to 40 goals, 70, 80 points, top-line player, power play merchant. This guy absolutely dominates the game as a first-line, just powerhouse scoring kind of guy. I mean, he's not a power forward, but he is so skilled and so dominant, and it's such a key piece there for Winnipeg that I like him here at the 6th spot. So obviously that is a big jump up for him. At number 7, we've got Sebastian Aho, who was originally a second rounder, of course, to Carolina. Originally, the number 7 pick was the Flyers selection, so that would have changed things substantially. But Aho is definitely a number 1 centerman, very skilled player as well. The fact of the position he plays and everything that he brings with his game to me is certainly worthy of this spot. At number 8, I've got the top defenseman in this draft class, which I currently would rank as Zach Werenski. He was also number 8 originally in this draft, and I think that's a fair spot for him. If you look at how the players would rank out in here, obviously, like I said, you're going to give a lot of the centermen a bit of an edge. As far as defensemen go, there's really only a handful, probably about 3 that I'd put up and high into this redraft. Otherwise, you're looking at a lot of centermen and a lot of wingers. But Werenski proved last year he can be the best in this draft class, and I think he'll likely remain in that spot for some time. At number 9, I went with another speedy centerman in Matthew Barzal, the New York Islanders. I really like Barzal's skill set. He can be a number 1 centerman, terrific speed, high-end productivity, great playmaker, and which I would take over a lot of the other players that would come after him in this draft at this point. At number 10, I went with Travis Konechny, the Flyers. Of course, originally the 10 pick was the Avalanche, so if they redid this and didn't get Rantanen, but they got Konechny, I mean, very different player, but again, somebody who plays extremely hard, has a lot of skill, can play in a variety of special teams for you. I really like Konechny's game. I can see him being a consistent, fairly high-end, top-end player after inking a long-term deal there with Philadelphia. Next up, I went with Timo Meier after Konechny. Now, Meier, to me, is a player that obviously had better production in San Jose than he did since he's been traded to New Jersey. Now, but he does still have that skill set. I think the Devils are just a different kind of team and different kind of skill set, different play, style and all that. So to me, I don't think that really reflects on him. But Meier is still a heck of a power forward who can put the puck in the net and really do a lot of good productive things here for New Jersey. So I really like Meier here at this 11 spot. Next up, we have Rupe Hintz of the Dallas Stars. That pick actually was originally a Stars pick, but they went with Gurianov. Rupe, obviously taken later into the draft. It was a bit of a steal where he was taken. Somebody who can be a number 1 center again and be very productive in a lot of special teams, to me, is having a heck of a career and deserves to move up in this draft. Next up, we have 13, Brock Besser of the Vancouver Canucks. Besser, to me, after being pretty consistent, anywhere from 25 to 35 goals, hit 40 goals once. Besser is one of the more productive players in this draft class. There are aspects of his game that will cause him to be lower than some of the other wingers here, but still a really good player who can put the puck on the net. And the hardest thing to do in the NHL is score, and he can do that. So clearly somebody that you would value having on your team here. Next up, after Brock Besser, we have the 14th spot, which I'm going to go with Dylan Strome. Originally number 3, he falls down obviously a number of spots here, but Strome had a really slow start to his career. But he finally found his game after bouncing around a little bit, ended up having a decent time with the Chicago Blackhawks, has found a good home as well in Washington, and has been productive there. I think Strome I'm not sure exactly why, but took longer to find that sweet spot and to find his game at a mature level to be more productive. But still a great player who is going to still play for a long time yet. And next up here at 15, we've got Thomas Chabot of the Ottawa Senators, exactly where he was originally. Obviously, number 18 overall, he ended up with that team. The 15th pick, of course, ended up being with the Boston Bruins if this was going to be redone. A lot of people thought Chabot, guys like Chabot and Connor, really should have ended up with the Bruins over the players they took. But their loss is other teams' gain, and obviously teams like Ottawa and Winnipeg benefited from that. But Chabot plays big minutes. He's got multiple 40, 50-point seasons. Terrific skater. Plays, like I said, a lot of responsibility. Hauls a lot of minutes for Ottawa. And really, when you're looking at the defenseman in the draft, you want a guy who can be, a responsible player to log a lot of minutes for you. Then you're going to really value that. So to me, I think Chabot is right in the middle of the first round. Here's kind of where he belongs. Next up at 16, we've got Joel Eriksson of the Minnesota Wild. Eriksson is a player that is a responsible two-way guy, and you're getting to that point in the first round where players that you can produce some offense, but also produce on these specialty teams like penalty killing, play a solid two-way responsible game, and that's really become a big part of his role as well. Same thing goes for the next one. In 17th overall, I'd put Anthony Cirelli. Cirelli's had a heck of a young career here so far. Obviously not a first-rounder originally, but would move up into the first round with my redraft here. Cirelli's just a really solid two-way player who is one of those guys and character players you can put in pretty much any situation, and he's a guy you can win with. He's got multiple Stanley Cups on his resume and just an overall pretty solid player that way. Next up at 18, we got Jake DeBrusk. Of course, the one Boston selection in the middle of that round that actually has made a decent career for himself now at the Vancouver Canucks, where he signed as an unrestricted free agent. So you can say what you want about the Bruins. They had 3 picks. One works out, and they let him walk for nothing right into the early part of free agency. So obviously that's not good for them. But DeBrusk, continues to be, 20 to 30 goals and somebody who can play pretty solid here on the wing. At 19, we've got Noah Hanifin, of course, originally drafted by Carolina, went over to Calgary, now with Vegas and signed to a long-term deal. Hanifin's not really going to wow you with a lot of numbers, but to me, he's a really solid second-pair defenseman, terrific skater, pretty good puck mover. Doesn't, like I said, give you a ton of points, but he's one of those players that just kind of fits in, logs a lot of minutes, does a lot of things well, but nothing overly flashy, so doesn't always get a ton of recognition here. But Hanifin, to me, pretty solid there towards the bottom half of the first round. And at number 20, we're going to put Rasmus Andersson of the Calgary Flames. Of course, Andersson's another player who's a lot of speculation around his future right now, but another defenseman in this draft that's pretty good two-way, second pair defenseman, right shot, which is good size. Lots to like about Andersson's game, and certainly would be drafted higher this time around than he was originally. So those are my new picks for the redrafting of the 2015 NHL draft class. As I mentioned, it's the 10-year anniversary being 2025. Lots of high-end talent. I think this draft class is going to go down as being one of the best ever. So let me know what your thoughts are. And if you think the picks should be in a different order, just let me know. We can talk about it maturely in the comments. Leave a comment with how you think the order should be, and we can all discuss as a community and see what everybody thinks. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.